Welcome to the Farmish Kind of Life podcast, where we talk about homesteading stuff and life stuff and everything in between. Join me, Amy Dingman, as we explore big questions on a little farm. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Farmish Kind of Life podcast. This is episode 273. It is April 1st, 2024. Happy April Fool's Day, I guess is what we would say. What is today's topic? Today we're going to be talking about two reasons that my husband and I have decided we're not raising meat birds this year. We're not going to be raising Cornish cross this year. This is going to be a discussion about being real about the resources available to you and the options available to you and making some choices about what you're going to do. So we'll get into that. But before we get to that, what's been happening on the Lifestead? Well, last week we were talking about a big snowstorm that was coming through, so we ended up with about 1.5 feet of snow from that storm. That is more snow than we have had all winter this year, which is totally uncommon. Normally we'd have way more snow by now, but it's been a very strange year. So this last snowstorm, the first round of it was really heavy, and then we had ice, and then we had powder. So it was really hard to plow because we couldn't get any traction to get rid of the snow. It was an exciting couple days. Everybody arrived safely where they needed to be, so that was good. Everybody got home from where they needed to be, so that was good. Glad that's over. Still waiting for it to melt, hoping it doesn't stick around much longer. We did need the moisture. We are in our third year of drought here, so we definitely needed the moisture, but man, it was difficult to see all that snow coming down after we'd already had temps in almost the 70s here. But what are you going to do? It's Minnesota. Ma Nature does what she does. What else? I candled the eggs that I have in my homemade incubator. We had put 33 eggs in there. When I candled them, we discovered that 28 of them were alive and kicking. The remaining was at 4 or 5. Didn't even look like they'd been fertilized. Then, as I was moving them around in the incubator, another one actually broke, so that was a bummer. So we are down to 27 eggs in the incubator. They are due to hatch, I think, April 5th, maybe. It might be a little bit of a slow hatch. The incubator is having a little bit of trouble staying up to temp, not because of the heater or anything that we did. I think it's actually the cooler. I think the cooler is just a little bit old and it's having a tough time for some reason staying up to temp. We've checked the temperature on everything and the actual element is what it needs to be, but it's just the actual cooler is a little bit on the struggle bus, but it's going to be okay. We might have a little bit of a slow hatch, but everything's developing, and so we're going to go with it. We're going to see what happens. What else? I'm just going to give you a little PSA here. I have a little beef with Google. I'm not going to tell you not to use Google. I'm not going to do that. But I do want to tell you something that's going on at Google. When you're doing a Google search, do not rely on what the previewed information tells you. You know, you put in like a search term and then all these results come up, and there's usually like a little preview or a little, a couple sentences that is supposed to go with what you searched for right under the title of the thing that has come up, right? Do not rely on what that previewed information tells you. I searched a couple days ago, how much is it to raise Cornish cross Farmish? Because I was actually researching something for this podcast. And I was trying to get to an article I'd written. Instead of just going right to the article, I did a search for the article. Now, what came up when I put this search term in, my article did come up and, the title came up, Feeding Cornish Cross Chickens, How Much Should They Eat? That's the name of the article. But the little preview of information it put underneath said, then a profit of the bird would be worth raising and raises retail to around $12 a bird or more. We here refuse to eat GMO anything, so the grain the animal, ... That was the preview. Now, the information that came up was not from my actual article. It's actually from a comment that was left on my article. It's not in my article. It's a comment that's after my article. And if you read that preview, if you're scrolling through and you read that preview and you don't know me, you're going to assume, number one, I run a very different kind of farm than the one I run. I don't have anything about, not eating GMOs or anything like that at my farm. But if you read that, you're going to assume that's me. And you're also going to assume that the financial question that had been asked, how much does it cost to raise Cornish cross? You're going to think that financial question has been answered when it hasn't been. I didn't say anything about $12 a bird in my article, right? So when you do a Google search, please, please, please click on the links and go to the articles and the blog posts instead of assuming that what comes up in the preview is the info or the quick answer that you're actually searching for. And additionally, and this is probably just selfishly, when you don't click on that link, the people who actually write the articles aren't getting any traffic, right? When Google is just cherry picking the information from them, people assume the preview is correct. They think they've got the information they need. And then the authors who wrote the article don't get the traffic, which is sometimes a really big thing that helps them pay the bills to keep the site running. Okay? So that's my little PSA for you. Now you know. Please click on the actual articles and don't just assume that what Google's pulling from the article is correct. I did have a blogger contact me and say, the reason that Google is pulling such odd things from my article is because I didn't do something when I wrote the article, and that is not what happened. I do the things that she said that I should do. So I don't know what's going on. I'm talking to some bloggers, but I do know that I've heard other people that have said, I've searched for an answer and Google's pulling up this weird thing, and I'm like, I don't even know what that has to do with the article, or I can't even find that in the article when I click on it. So there's definitely some stuff going on. And I just want you to know. Click on the article, actually read. Don't assume that what Google's bringing up is what you wanted. All right, what else? What else is happening on the Lifestead? The youngest son moves out today. He's moving a couple hours away to Red Wing, Minnesota, which I have never been to. I hear it's beautiful. I know it's beautiful. It's right on the river, and so a really, really cool town. He is headed there with his girlfriend to start school, so that is exciting. They'll be starting there in August, but wanted to get moved down so they can start life down there and get things set before school actually starts. So this is exciting and awesome, and we'll be traveling a lot to Red Wing, I suppose, now, which is going to be a really fun trip to take on a bike. I'm really excited to go see his apartment, though. It's in a really there's a lot of very old buildings in Red Wing, and so I'm super excited to go see his apartment and see if I can feel any spirits in there. He said, Mom, you have to come down to our apartment and see if you think it's haunted. So that's going to be exciting, right? I'll be real excited about that. All right. Now with that all out of the way, let's head over to this main topic, and I'm going to tell you the 2 reasons that we have decided we're not going to be raising meat birds this year. So today we're going to have a little conversation about understanding what your actual resources are, understanding what options you have when you're considering doing different things, and when you maybe need to make a decision that might go against what other people in the community might do. We're going to talk about the 2 reasons actually that my husband and I have decided we're not doing Cornish cross this year. We've raised Cornish cross for many years. We haven't the last couple years simply because I was working outside the home and we either would forget to, order them or whatever. We just hadn't got them for the last couple years. We were going to get them this year, but stuff has changed. I want to tell you all about it. All right, so 2 reasons we're not getting meat birds this year. The first reason actually has to do with a pretty exciting story, and it has to do with rabbits. Okay, now I mentioned a couple years ago, maybe a few years ago, that we were thinking about getting rabbits, right? We wanted to get meat rabbits, add those to the farm. But shortly after I started talking about that, it kind of got dropped because I got a job outside the home. The kids weren't home as much because they're growing up and doing their own thing. We were starting to cook a little bit differently. Meals were smaller. Meals were totally different because nobody was home. And so in the back of my mind, I started thinking, why would we add rabbits? Why would we add more animals to our farm when nobody's here? We just got all this stuff going on. Why would I add more animals? But also in the back of my mind, there was still this little but I kind of want to add rabbits. So this back and forth in my mind, just like, what are we going to do, right? Fast forward to a couple months ago where I am at work and a coworker is talking about his aunt who raises rabbits and how she just had more rabbits and baby rabbits. And we start talking about that. And I start thinking about rabbits again, because every day we eat lunch together and we start talking about rabbits, right? And then there's other people in the community that have rabbits and they're posting pictures of the little kits, and they're talking about getting rabbits, all of that. And everybody's talking about how great rabbits are. And so I start thinking, maybe we should add rabbits this year. And I'm wondering, how do I bring that up to Mr. Farmish, my wonderful husband? How do I bring that up that I'm thinking, maybe we should revisit this rabbit thing again. Now, to be completely honest, my work situation is changing next month. I'm going to be back home on the farm full time. And there's been a lot of changes here, and we've really started thinking a little bit differently about the farm. And I shouldn't even say differently. I should say we're just going back to picking up the actual intention of being here and realizing all the options that we have here, and just, coming out of this very strange few years that we've been in the last few years with a lot of different life changes. So I was trying to figure out, okay, how do I bring up rabbits again to my husband? Because he's probably just going to give me this look like, Amy, come on now. Think this through. We've already talked about this. Think this through. Come on. So I'm trying to figure this out. And we sit down to have lunch one day. And I'm just about to say, rabbits, right? I'm just about to say this. And do you know what my husband says? Do you know what comes out of his mouth before I can even bring this up? My sweet husband starts talking about rabbits. He starts talking about how the night before, the guys at work were talking about rabbits and how rabbits are this really sustainable meat, right? And so he starts talking about how Amy has lots of friends who have rabbits and all this other stuff. And so maybe, long story short, you guys, we are getting rabbits. We are getting rabbits this year. We're going to get them late spring. We've already been talking to some people about getting rabbits. We're getting this going, right? Long story short, we're getting rabbits. So that's kind of the first exciting part of the story. And my husband mentioned something when we started talking about this again, right? He brings it up and we're like, oh my gosh, okay, so let's get rabbits. He brings something up in this conversation that I never really thought about. If we get rabbits, our big barn, because we have two barns here, we have a big barn and a little barn, our big barn would be a closed system. Like self-sufficient in a way, if you will. We wouldn't need to order from hatcheries or breeders or other farms every year for the big barn, because everything in the big barn would be reproducing itself. We have Muscovy ducks for meat and duck eggs. We have a big old flock of egg birds, chickens, and then we'd have rabbits, okay? So all those animals would just be doing their own thing, making their own babies, reproducing themselves, wouldn't have to order from anywhere, right? Now, I have talked about wanting a closed system before. I've talked about that before. I've talked about aiming towards that. But there was something about him saying it and bringing it up and being like, our big red barn, like our big barn would just be like sufficient. It'd be its own thing, right? That made me realize, whoa, like we could do this. That would be awesome, okay? Now, I mentioned we do have two barns. We have a smaller barn, and our smaller barn would be pigs because we do get a couple feeders every year from a local farm that's a couple miles away. And if we wanted, for some reason, to do Cornish cross, because that's the first thing I mentioned in this podcast, right? Why are we not doing Cornish cross this year? If for some reason we wanted to do Cornish cross, which are birds you have to order every year because they don't really have their own babies, that's a whole nother kind of podcast. But if we wanted to do Cornish cross, we could put them over there. And that's where they've always been. We called it the Chicken Bacon Ranch because that's where the meat birds and the pigs were, okay? So the question is, do we need meat birds? Do we need to order meat birds this year? Now, we can just butcher our egg birds, right? If we decide permanently we're just not going to do Cornish cross anymore for whatever reason, we could refresh our egg birds with more dual-purpose, hardier birds, So when we were butchering birds, if we were to butcher our chickens, it wouldn't be the meat of a Cornish cross, but it also wouldn't be like a leghorn, right? And if you're not familiar with chickens, a leghorn is like an egg-laying machine kind of chicken, but they're skinny, right? They're not for meat. So we'd get something that would be in between, okay? But this is where we kind of get into the second reason. I said there was two reasons that we weren't going to get meat birds this year. The first was we're going to get rabbits, right? So don't really need to have Cornish cross. We don't need to, also have chickens on the farm. We're going to try this rabbit thing and see how it works out for us, right? So that's the first reason. The second reason could potentially be divisive within the homesteading community, okay? But here we go. The second reason that we're not going to get meat birds this year is I can actually get chicken way cheaper at the local discount food store than I can raise it myself. If I am patient and I pay attention to what's going on at the local discount food store, because sometimes you got to jump on it. When they say they have stuff, you got to jump on it. You got to drive there. You got to get it. I can get chicken way cheaper there than I can even think about raising it myself. Now, this is about using your resources correctly, okay? Any of us only have so much time and so much money and so much space. And in the homesteading community, some of us like to talk about when times get tough. If times really do get tough, like some people are fantasizing about, you are not going to care that your chicken came from the discount food store. You are not going to care who raised it. What you're going to care about is that you have food on your plate. So me deciding to just get chicken from the discount food store and then bring it home and put it in the freezer, or brine it and smoke it and put it in the freezer, or pressure can it, or whatever, might be a better use of my resources than raising up a coop of 50 birds myself that cost way more than $1 a pound to grow out. I'm going to give you a little caveat here. I can go to the discount food store and get 4 pounds of chicken for $4. And that is less than it cost me to raise a 5-pound bird in 2019. And 2019 is the last time that we figured out stats on raising Cornish cross here. Now, your stats may be different depending on how much you're paying per chick, depending on what kind of food you have available to you, depending on a whole bunch of stuff, okay? But as far as our stats, and that was 2019, cost of stuff has only gone up, y'all, right? So if I know that I can go to the discount food store and get 4 pounds of chicken for $4, or 10 pounds of chicken for $10, whatever, however they're boxing it up that day. If I know that I can get that cheaper than what I can raise it for, sometimes you make the decision, you know what, I'm not going to raise chicken. I can get it cheaper somewhere else. Now, I know some of you almost just had a heart attack, right? And you got a million things going through your mind. Oh my God, I would never eat chicken from the store. Oh my God, what if the store doesn't have chicken? You need to order your Cornish cross today so you can have chicken available to eat. You need to raise that up. You need to butcher it. You need to put it in your freezer. Go get your Cornish cross. What if the store doesn't have chicken when you want it? So I have a couple answers for that. First of all, that's a really ironic thing for people who are raising Cornish cross to say, because if you are raising Cornish cross, you're only getting them because the hatchery has them, right? You can't hatch them out yourself. You can only get them because the hatchery has them. So just because you're getting them from the hatchery before they're raised up and butchered and not from the grocery store after they're raised up and butchered, it doesn't put you in some different level of self-sufficiency, at least the way I'm looking at it. Yes, you're raising it yourself, but you still have to get the product from somewhere else. Do you know what I'm saying? And I think this is where we need to have a conversation, because y'all, we don't need chicken. If you don't have access to chicken for the recipe you want to make, you're not going to die. If you don't have chicken this month, you're not going to die. If you have to wait 3 weeks before you can get a chicken, you're not going to die, right? And sometimes in the homesteading community or the raise your own community, it's all about having options, right? We have pork, we have duck, we have turkey, we have pheasant, we have chicken, we have rabbit, we have everything, right? It's all about having options. And that's awesome. Options are great. But other times I feel like it's about we need to have all the things, and it gets a little bit weird and like hoardy, like we're hoarding. And it's all about how much you can raise and grow and store and stack up and stuff away. And we forget that if we don't have all the million things with the 14 different options, we're not going to die. Okay? We're not. At our homestead, we are really blessed to have access to a lot of meat. Some of it we're raising, some of it we're getting from other farmers, some of it we get from the grocery store. We still shop at the grocery store, y'all. I do not have room in my freezers right now to butcher anything else. If we had to butcher something, I would have to go buy another freezer. Like, there just isn't room. And that's a really awesome problem to have, right? So I don't need to raise Cornish cross. And if I want chicken, I know I can get it cheaper at the discount food store. But something we don't talk about very often anymore is that if you can't get the thing you want, you don't get the thing you want. And 9 times out of 10, you're not going to die. Do I like chicken? Yeah. Am I going to curl up in the corner and waste away to nothing if for the next 3 months I can't have a chicken breast? No. And I'm not in a situation where I don't have any other options. Are there people out there who need to raise their own chickens because that's the only way they're going to manage to eat anything? That's a whole nother rabbit hole to go down, and we're not going to do that on the podcast today. But it's a conversation we need to have, y'all. If you don't have it, you're not going to die. There's other options. That's the reality of the world we live in today. Figure out what makes the most sense for your situation. Do you want to rely on the grocery store? Maybe not. I don't think you should rely on the grocery store if you don't need to. But does that mean you need to raise everything? No. Does that mean you can raise everything? No. Can you grow everything? No. You might choose which things you're going to do at your homestead based on what you like to do or what's easily available for you to get to start, or maybe what you can't reliably get at the grocery store. Or maybe you decide to raise and grow what you've noticed a big taste difference in. Or maybe it has to do with how much space you have or how much money you have or what the ROI is. If it makes sense for you to raise chickens for meat and you want to raise chickens for meat, do it. But if you happen to be in a situation where it doesn't make sense this year, for whatever reason, then don't raise them. Your decision either way is not going to make you gain or lose homesteader points. At least not with me, because that's not why I got into homesteading, and that's not what we do here. So maybe you totally disagree with what I've said here, and you'd never be caught dead buying chicken in the store or beef in the store or duck in the store or lettuce in the store or anything in the store. I don't know. That's your prerogative, and I think that's great. You can do what you want. All I know is that I'm really excited to attempt rabbits this year, starting in the late spring. And I'm okay with not doing Cornish cross this year because I know if I have a hankering for chicken, I can head to the discount food store and get me some for a really amazing price, along with a lot of other things too. So this is about using your resources wisely, and everybody has different resources, right? So use your resources wisely, explore all the options you have, pick and choose what works for you, and don't be concerned about how many homesteader points you're gaining or losing, because I will let you in on a secret. There is nowhere to turn that scorecard in at. There is no prize to redeem for filling out all the little check marks on the homesteader box. There's no prize, okay? Tear it up and throw it away and do what works for you. Hope you enjoyed the show today. To continue the conversation, visit our website at afarmishkindoflife.com, find A Farmish Kind of Life on social media, or drop me an email at amy@afarmishkindoflife.com. Peace, love, and bacon, y'all. Stay farmish.